This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are in the capital of the United States of America, Washington, D.C. We are joined by a member of the U.S. Congress, Benishek. He represents the state of Michigan. And I have to tell you, I was working with my daughter. She's in 5th grade on the maps of the United States of America. And I was showing her Michigan, and she looked at the Upper Peninsula and she said, "Is that in Michigan or is that in Wisconsin?" And so I was trying to explain to her the history of it. What can you tell us about the old Upper Peninsula?
Part of Michigan.
Right.
And it's great. You know, I represent the northern half of Michigan, so I represent the entire Upper Peninsula and a good part of the Lower Peninsula. So we represent half the state as far as the landmass. So it's been a lot of fun getting to meet all the people around there and traveling.
And let's talk about that, because Michigan geographically is a big state. And so if you're telling us that you represent half the state, that means you have a huge geographic territory. And I understand not only is it huge literally, but you're in 2 time zones, sir.
Right, right. Well, you know, I like to tell people that my home is further from Detroit than Detroit is from Washington.
Is that true?
Yeah. So we spend a lot of time on the road in northern Michigan. So it's I just drove on Sunday from my home in Crystal Falls to Ludington. So that was about a 9-hour pull, and that's not even you know, the whole width of the district.
What is the width? Do you have a sense?
Well, it's probably about 10 or 12 hours from one end to the other, you know, if you take the longest route. But it's been really a pleasure, actually, to represent it and to travel to all the different little towns and just meet all these great people.
And do you have a sense, though, I mean, when you think about a span of 10 to 12 hours driving, I have to think the interests are completely divergent, they're different.
Well, absolutely.
And so how do you satisfy the needs of people living so far and wide?
Well, you have to listen to people.
Right.
I mean, that's what basically we end up doing. Like the Western UP, economically, it's a pretty tough place to, you know, make a living. And that's different than, say, Traverse City, which is doing well. So every town has its own flavor and need. You know, Alpena is different than Ludington.
Right.
Certainly Ironwood is even different than St. Ignace. So there's a lot of things, you learn a lot.
And
it's really been great.
I would think that all of those towns are different than Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Or Flint.
Yeah.
Because when one thinks of Michigan, you know, there is a sense that Michigan, you know, starts and ends in Detroit, and boy, is that wrong.
That's wrong.
And so, while you represent the UP, you are a representative for the state of Michigan, and so how does that interplay?
Well, it's been great, actually, and I represent more than the UP. I represent
well, like you
the
said,
top of the mid too, and you know, it is different. It's great. You know, the tourist economy up north, the ag economy up north. I've had to learn a lot about that, and it's been really a pleasure to meet the people involved in those things.
And let's talk about learning about all those areas. Obviously, I don't mean to be a sycophant, but you're a doctor, presumably a bright guy. You know, you're able to learn quickly.
A good example is the ag side of things. You know, as a doctor, I never really was on the farm.
No.
And I didn't really know much about ag, but when I started representing a lot of ag interests, you know, Michigan's farm economy is just as diverse as California.
Right.
So we have cherries, apples, asparagus, potatoes, and you know, I had to go out and talk to farmers to learn about what their issues were.
And what do they think when this member of Congress approaches? He happens to be a doctor. What is their sense? Are they excited? Are they skeptical? Are they looking forward to?
Well, they just want to make sure that I understand that the important issues that they have, and it's been quite a great experience. You know, every single Lay's potato chip in the country starts in my district.
That's actually good news, because I love Lay's potato chips.
I'm just saying, I didn't know that when I started, and you know, potatoes are a pretty good crop. It's actually increasing in numbers.
Good to hear.
In Newberry and the eastern UP, there there's thousands of more acres under cultivation. It's good for the economy of the area.
And how is the economy doing generally? Because look, we are coming out of a recession, but it does seem to me that it's a little spotty.
The economy could do a lot better. I mean, everybody that I talk to talks about the regulations coming out of Washington is killing them, no matter what sector they are. You know, healthcare, as you know, the president's healthcare bill has added a lot of rules to and costs to healthcare.
Right.
So that's making it more expensive, frankly, for everybody.
And it's interesting you mentioned that. I was speaking with Dr. Rowe, one of your colleagues from Tennessee, and we were talking about the cost of drugs and how there's a new Hep C drug, for example, that is incredibly effective but incredibly expensive. And that one drug is causing premiums to spike. And so we are trying to parse out what can be done when these wonder drugs hit the market, but yet they're so expensive that it impacts the entire premium market.
Well, I think that's an investment that we need to make in that drug because the overall care of those people with Hep C is going to go down. The cost is going to go down as they're cured. This is a cure for hepatitis C, so it's a dramatic change in the way it's been treated.
I know for you, one of your proudest accomplishments is your ability to help the veterans. And I don't mean the veterans plural. I mean each individual veteran. And I was speaking with one of my colleagues who has a personal story where her staffer was impacted by the Veterans Administration, and it was your staff that helped her family. I mean, your staffer literally, she told me the story, walked over to the Social Security Administration to resolve this issue. I'm getting chills talking about it because it is very moving to think that you represent hundreds of thousands of people, but you and your staff were able to impact one.
Well, to tell you the truth, Brad, that's probably one of the most favorite parts of being here in Congress. You know, I was a doctor. I worked at the VA in a hospital in Iron Mountain for about 20 years. And, you know, I know many of the concerns that veterans have. You know, they're great people. They deserve what the benefit they've earned.
They signed up.
So, you know, a lot of the stuff we do here in Washington, it seems like we're trying to help the whole system. But as you say, helping, you know, one person at a time actually feels great. And you feel like you've actually done something. So we're really working on, in the district, doing these veteran assistance fairs, for example, trying to get people to be able to come to one spot and get information about all the benefits they have, like education benefits or disability.
And that can't be easy. You don't represent urban Detroit. You represent 12 hours across.
Well, that's the beauty of it, is we're trying to do this around the district, so somebody has the opportunity to get the information needed right there in their hometown. So it's been really great.
It must have been so frustrating for you over the last few years to see what happened at some of these VA hospitals since you had worked at one. The wait times were astronomical, over 400 days in some locations. I know we're working to get them down to 125 days, which to me still seems, I'm not trying to take a position, still seems long to me, but you know, do you see that positive steps are being taken?
It is very frustrating at the pace at which change occurs. And you know, we have a new secretary at the VA who's promised that he's going to do better. I'd like to see things move faster. You know, as a surgeon, I'm used to getting things done immediately.
You need to.
But the VA, as far as I'm concerned, is just moving too slow, and that's a really important reason for our committee to keep bringing the administration in front of the committee, explaining what's going on here. Why aren't you making change faster?
The good news seems to be that there's bipartisan support on this very issue.
Well,
in your eyes,
committee is great as far as its bipartisanship. I think there's not really any partisan bickering in the committee. I'm very happy with the members on both sides.
Okay, his name is Dan Benishek. He is a member of the United States Congress representing half of the state of Michigan. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are coming to you from the nation's capital. This is Charter Local Edition.